Because Sawyer does actually have bilateral cochlear implants, which he received at 18 months. He's adopted, so we didn't know he was deaf when we adopted him, but we did go, our instant reaction was, oh no, he can't hear, we need to make him hear. And we went through the process of getting the cochlear implants, which was not at all what I expected it to be or was led to believe that it would be. It was not very successful. Obviously there's the surgical aspect of it, which is very hard on a little person and hard for a parent to watch. Then there's also the work that's involved with, it's not like you just put them on and they hear and everything's great. As a matter of fact, the first time they turned his implants on, there was no reaction whatsoever, which was absolutely devastating because you go through this entire process and you expect at least some payoff at the end, and there was nothing. I do remember the first time I know he actually heard something with his cochlears. We were in the car, and I think it was December, so it was Christmas time, and we were driving, and there was a song on the radio. He had fallen asleep in the back seat. My husband and I were in the front, and there was a Christmas song on the radio. It was a Little Drummer Boy, and I blasted it, and he went like that. And I was like, oh, okay, so they do work. And I did it. I turned it back down, let him fall back asleep, and blasted it again. So that was at least some vindication that, okay, well, he can hear. And he did use them for a few years. He probably used them till he was about 4, but throughout that time, there was a constant stress of when's he going to pull them off and throw them across the room. He's in his preschool class, and he's thrown his implant, and we can't find it, so I have to drop everything, leave work, go to the school for 2 hours searching for this piece of equipment that is absolutely vital to him. At the age of 4, we pretty much decided we'd had enough of doing that. He didn't seem to want to wear them. He always fought wearing them. We always signed in conjunction with him having the implant, so we just said, fine, we'll just not use them anymore, and we haven't used them since, and it's been fine. And so looking back over that time, I think of all the resources, time and financial, and the stress of having them, I would have done it differently. I would have liked to look at our family resources and maybe put more efforts into becoming fluent in sign sooner. I'm not fluent now, but I would have at least, had more of a jump start on that. Resources for his learning, not learning how to hear, but learning how to communicate in his language, learning how to do things, learning just kid stuff. So my advice to a parent would be to stop and think before you do it, and don't succumb to the emotions of grief that you're going to have. If your child can't hear and you can, you're going to experience grief over that, and that's a devastating thing, but it's really not the end of the world. And really, hearing is not everything. It's there's some benefits actually to him not being able to hear. I don't have to listen to toys beeping in my house, little trains and cars and things that have electronic sounds. It's very quiet and peaceful a lot of the time. Sound on the TV, you don't have to listen to that. That's kind of nice. His reading he's really, doing well with reading because he has to rely on captions on television. If he wants to watch TV, we put captions on, and he'll come up to me and spell words. I'm like, how did you know that word? But he knows because it's something, that's where his efforts are going. That's what he's doing to, make connections with the world, which it's kind of nice. And another benefit is my husband and I both sign. So when you're out in public and you're across a crowded room, if I need to tell him something, I can just get his attention, sign it, and it's kind of great. And it's nice to see him express himself in his natural language. He gets so excited to act out stories and, put costumes on and play with his cats, and he does all the stuff that, anybody else can do. He just can't hear, and it's really not that big of a deal. So I guess that's it, unless you have a question.
What about hearing aids? Are those a option?
Well, he tried those. That was part of going through the cochlear implant process, but once you've had the cochlear implant surgery, those are no longer an option because the cochlear implant surgery actually, I guess by virtue of them inserting the electrodes into the cochlea, that kind of, he has no hearing. If he did have, some children have residual hearing where a hearing aid would help. If he did have any residual hearing, which I don't believe that he had any at all, after the cochlear implant surgery, that would be completely obliterated.
Could he, as he gets older, if he decides he wants to use the cochlear implant again, could he just turn it back on?
He could, but it would be a long, arduous process of learning how to hear. He wouldn't just automatically put them on and hear like you and I hear. That part of his brain would have to be trained to take in that kind of input, and that would be a very daunting task. And I also don't know what the condition of the internal mechanisms is, because there are electrodes. I believe there are 12 electrodes, and they can fail. As a matter of fact, at one point, one of his did fail, and he had to be re-implanted, and that was, I mean, that was unpleasant to say the least.
When you say you have to learn from it, so they start to hear sound and then they have to kind of learn to work with that?
You have to learn how to process it.
Yeah,
I mean, if
yeah.
you, like, if you never heard, I don't know, what's an obscure language, you know, a dialect of Chinese, you would hear it and you wouldn't have any clue what was going on. It would just be arbitrary sounds to you, but you could learn and, you know, develop a knowledge of that. It's the same thing. He doesn't know what English is. I mean, you know, this is cat.
May I have your
It's
attention,
not a
please?
sound.